Thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the space. If you don't have your institution, like myself, listed, feel free to just drop that in the chat so we know where everyone is coming from. I don't believe we have any new faces on. Nope, I don't see any new folks. But so I wanted to first say congratulations. If you saw in my agenda items, we have chair-elect updates. So I wanted to give a big round of applause to Curtis, who is going to be chair-elect with me. So thank you, thank you, thank you for that. And I look forward to next year being a part of your committee and assisting how I might be able to do so. So thanks, Curtis. I don't know if you want to unmute and say any words.
No, I'm just excited to learn from you throughout the course of the rest of this term, and to hopefully continue the legacy that you leave.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's a work in progress. We're all learning, so I look forward to working with you, etc. So that's the first one. So chair-elect update, and we wanted to have an opportunity. Well, let me give you an update on what happened. So last time we met, we had a conversation about putting together a survey, which would be distributed based on the conversation that we had. Tori had some extenuating circumstances, and so that didn't necessarily go out, but I think that provides an opportunity for folks to give feedback on the survey before it is distributed. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it in the chat for folks to get their eyes on that, give any feedback. And then we're going to go ahead and distribute it. And we were thinking a 2 to 3 week turnaround with some reminders in between, and for it to go out on the I guess the listserv that's specific to research, as opposed to all of ACUHO-I, just narrow down that search. Tori, please let me know if I'm missing anything.
Yeah, so I was going to post it in the research community, in the online community, and then also pull a list of members who either work in research or assessment or have that listed as an interest area, and then send this out to that subgroup of members. And then if we are not getting a ton of responses or we want to try to get some more, ACUHO-I has a LinkedIn group. LinkedIn, as I was telling Ariel, confuses me a bit sometimes, but there's the ACUHO-I page, but there's also an ACUHO-I group, which you can join. And there are occasional posts there, not from ACUHO-I, but from others. On occasion, I have posted on behalf of researchers there, when IRB has said, we don't want you to post this from your personal account recruiting people. And so I've posted, on behalf of them. But otherwise it's all members of that group. So that would also be a place we could potentially source respondents from. But so those would sort of be like the three places that we would go.
Okay, so I'm gonna give folks a few minutes to just click through that survey and give us any feedback. It's a preview, so we should be able to do that.
We are also using it as a way to gather contact information if there are folks who complete it and are not involved with the committee and would like to be. So there's an optional, would you like to share contact information question at the end? And if they say yes, then, we ask what types of engagement and then for they're interested in, and then for their contact information. So, yeah, so hopefully we'll get some more folks involved that way too.
wonder how many people are actually going to click on the future of the profession link to get some, definitions of the, the rank them 1 to 8, 1 being the best fit for your top choice and being the worst fit for your last choice. If there are intentional kind of definitions about like increasing belonging and what we mean by that term belonging.
Oh, yeah. So you're saying on the ranking question to maybe put like a few things in parentheses
Yeah,
after, like, for example,
exactly.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think you're probably right. We'll have those that are already somewhat familiar, those who click, and then a good group that just are like, nope, I don't have time for that. This is what I think. So yeah, I can definitely do that.
And I see for the ranking, belonging is just missing a G.
I did see that just now
Yeah,
too, and
just saw that.
I just fixed it, but it's probably not showing up since I
Yeah.
just did that.
Hi all. Um, yeah, I think I agree. I think I'm sorry, I'm on my phone. I think it was Ben who just mentioned finding a quick visual, maybe a quick way of defining those terms. I was kind of thinking of that too, worrying about the people who would be on their phones like I am, trying to read the description of those ranked items. Might be a little bit difficult. The other thing I was thinking about um, was maybe we can consider splitting the question about why did you rank these the way you did into maybe why did you rank the top three the way you did, and why did you rank the bottom three the way you did? Like why did you put those items in those extreme spots? You know what I mean? Maybe that'll give. I feel like that for me is if I were responding, it would give me a little bit more of a push to really answer that question and give you some good feedback.
Thank you for that. That makes sense, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Any tips and tricks to get folks to actually complete the survey is helpful. I had the same worries that everyone else did, but I didn't have a solution. Any final thoughts on this? Yeah. If anything comes up, we're launching at the end of our meeting, or maybe tomorrow, Tori, so
Yeah,
there's
more
time.
likely tomorrow,
Yeah.
or potentially Friday. Definitely this week though. I'm in for a half day tomorrow, so
Okay.
if it doesn't get done by lunchtime, it'll get done on Friday.
Okay. And so the next ask is we're going to be moving into discussions about webinars, and or whatever we want it to be. So I'll say more about that. But we do need someone other than Tori, preferably, to create an assessment, even just like a mock-up of what that might look like. So at the end of a webinar, and we want some feedback about said, let's just call it event, what might that look like? So I just wanted to ask this group if there's anybody who's willing to do, a quick assessment, maybe three to five questions about the webinar, if we have any volunteers for that.
Sure.
And oh, was that you, Curtis?
That was me.
Okay. You said yes? That's you?
Yes.
You're
Yes.
interested? Okay. Thank you. And Tori said that she just needs a list of questions. Don't need to create the survey, so that's helpful. All right, so with the group that's here, what I wanted to do, we have 9 folks, is do some brainstorming for webinar ideas for the fall and or next spring. And I'm saying webinar or something, adjacent to that, whatever we want to call it. So I was thinking we could even do like a chat and chew where, folks, we just put folks are in the space, and I haven't cleared this with Tori yet. So Tori, you tell me if I'm like, um, you're gonna say something?
No, I think you did actually bring that up when we
Oh,
were
first break, like way
chatting
back when.
earlier.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think that's fine. I think honestly anything is fine. I'm open to any idea to engage with folks about research.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And so kind of like an example for the group, the question is, what are some topics you would like to see discussed? And perhaps like, who do you have in mind? And something I was thinking of, because, prior to being a part of this committee, when I think of webinar, I'm thinking someone who has, done an IRB in terms of research, and is, doing something that's very thorough. But it could be something like here at Rutgers, we had focus groups. Like, I've been running focus groups for many years with our living learning communities. And this is the first time that we trained all of the department on how to run a focus group, because myself and my, one person in our office, we needed assistance. So, what was our problem, how we solved it, maybe how did we run the focus groups, and what were the results, how are we sharing out the reports? Like, that could be a, 20-30 minute session, and it's not something that is, formal research with an IRB, et cetera. So I just wanted to give that an example as, as we're getting into our breakout groups, for folks to just think about topics that you or, your colleagues and or even grads in your departments, you might want to pitch to them to do a webinar or a chat and shoot for us. So I was thinking groups of, we have 9 people, maybe groups of 3. Are you able to do that for me, Tori? Just random group assignments?
Yes, so we would need three rooms.
Yeah, and maybe 15 minutes to discuss, and then we'll come back and share out what we've come up with.
Okay.
Any
right.
questions before we go into breakouts? No? Okay. All right. I hope folks enjoyed that time with one another, being able to brainstorm. So I'll just get us started, and then whoever wrote down for your group, you can feel free to share. I was myself, Leah, and Greg. So we were talking about, Greg had an idea about the grant proposal process. So having someone present on what the process was in order to write the proposal for the grant and kind of like start to finish what it is that they did. And hey, Tori, there might already be a video on this, so you tell us. And essentially getting folks the sentiment of not being afraid to participate in research, that it is something that is accessible, because sometimes, you know, research can feel like it's not accessible. And then have it be a call to action. So it's prior to the grant proposal process going live. And then followed by a chat and chew of what you're considering for the research in order to create a space of community. So a webinar, followed by chat and chew, and, you know, encouragement to submit the proposals. So that's one. And then it was mentioned maybe a lit review resource. So essentially, a list of resources. Actually, that was the one that we were a little bit like jumbled on, but resources related to the ACUHO-I work that folks could utilize prior to doing their grant proposal. Is that what it was, Greg? That one was yours, so.
Just like kind of going through like the overall process of like how do you put together your literature for these kind of research
Mhm. Okay. Leah came up with navigating research without statistical software, and essentially like how do you do research on a budget, and maybe do a roundtable for that one. And yeah, what are the tools available to do research, costs, etc. So that's where what we came up with. Any of those resonating with folks?
We also, in our group, said something about like using campus resources that sort of ties in, I think, a little bit to what you're talking about. So like, um, you know, you have a sponsored research office, you have an institutional research office, you have research librarians, like there's so many campus resources available to help with these things that maybe it would be useful to just talk about like what they are. And while they may not exist at every campus, a version of them likely does.
Mhm.
So like what are the possibilities you could use at your campus? And speaking of like software, many campuses have licenses so you can access for free. Usually term limited, but like I have access to SPSS and other things for free. So through Ohio State. Um so there's that one. That sort of I think could link up with. Um
Okay.
and I think the literature review one is good because right you probably did that a few times in school, but then like what's that look like in real life? You know, when you're doing it for your job or for a project you're working on. And it could be a useful way to highlight ACUHO-I resources like the journal and even just the library we have in the online community that has presentations and talking stick stories and all kinds of stuff. So um, yeah, I think that's also a useful one. Um, there is a video because I had a session last year, like how to basically on submitting a research grant proposal. Um, it's very specific to our grant proposal though. So, you know, I think it could be helpful to do more of like a general, like how do you submit a conference proposal or how do you submit a grant proposal, like those different things you can do. Because I think we should be encouraging folks to get their work out there. Another idea that Christiana suggested is like a micro learning sort of approach to essentially having a very targeted 30 to 45 minutes on one skill or one concept to really feel like you can master that or have a much better grasp of it when you leave. So the example was a like focus group that you brought up of having a session about like how do you actually do a focus group, and that's like all you talk about is just that like that
Yeah.
process for 30 to 45 minutes.
Yep.
And that could apply to other parts of the research process, but sort of breaking it down so that, you know, instead of talking about maybe like the whole cycle of research in 1 hour, you focus on one piece of it,
Right.
or one methodology or something. So that was something I wrote down. Thinking of like practical versus applied research and assessment. So like the difference between doing research in a like a class or as a student versus on the job. So like what does it look like to actually do that? And that could be both like a panel of professionals talking about maybe at different levels of their career, talking about what that looks like. But it could also be more skills based of this is what that, you know, like actual steps in the process or some of these other ideas we've had, which are pieces of that process, like writing the lit review, you know, applying for funds, maybe even I think maybe Ben or suggested the IRB, deep dive into IRB in the comments before. That could be a session, just sort of like what is the IRB? Why is it around? You know, what's the process generally look like? Because it's a little different depending on what campus you're on. But yeah, so I think those are like the gist of what I wrote down. Oh, low response rate. That's the last one. Sort of you've got a low response rate to your survey. Now what do you do? Sort of
Yeah.
talking about like, how do you recruit effectively for whether it's quantitative or qualitative research? Like, what are your techniques? What methods do you use to do that? That I think that was it.
For that one, the recruitment piece and all of that sounded like leading up to the um research. But the question of now what? That sounds like after the fact. So were there any specific items for the after the fact part?
I guess we talked a little bit about that too. I think it yeah, I don't know if I'm doing a lot of talking. If Curtis or Christiana want to add in for what we talked about.
Well, I had two things. I think so. The now what is also like, okay, so I have I have a poor response rate. Now what is more like, okay, how can I proactively plan so I don't have a poor response rate? But then,
Uh,
but also, okay, so now I've collected this data, whether it's my data response was small or large, what do I do with that data? How can I interpret that data? How can I make meaning? What tools are available to me? How can I connect with experts on my campus to make meaning and understanding out of the information that I collect?
yeah, thank you. And our final group?
Okay, I took the notes, so I'll summarize, but group, please chime in. So we sort of broke it down of like research-based webinar topics. The first one is like broad scope, your dissertation. How might you choose or develop your dissertation topic? Why is this important? Is it implementable? What are maybe some common methodologies you should think about or talk through as you are in this planning stage? And then sort of thinking about how might you present results if you're coming up with such topic. Ben suggested we have like the ACUHO-I has the dissertation of the year individuals, and so tapping into the knowledge that we already have of putting a panel of those individuals together to maybe speak about their research, talk about how they went about it, lessons learned, maybe things to consider. What are they doing now, or what their hopes are moving forward. Another topic that Paul mentioned is a lot of campuses have and like housing offices have individuals that have like research or assessment as part of their functional job responsibilities. And so tapping into those folks for them to share more about like what is the job that you do, or the senior housing officers explaining why did you create this department? How does it help you in your work in your institution? They might be full or part-time individuals. How do these offices function? How are you guys utilizing campus housing data? How might you and your school utilize campus housing data if you don't have these individuals present? We also talked about a webinar, sort of what the group mentioned of what research already exists out there, how is it readily available to you, and how might you utilize it? Which bleeds into another topical area of what are the national surveys, conferences. I think, Paul, you might have mentioned like groups of schools or coalitions that exist, or large scale surveys that schools are using. Who are your peer institutions and why, and how are we utilizing this data? Sort of thinking about like Sky Factor-esque type of things. And then we sort of went to the topical area of assessment with the idea of like beyond the, also Tori and Ariel, I have these notes I can email you. So beyond the quarterly or annual report, what are you doing with this data and what can we do with this data? So sort of like a creative approach to that. And then we talked about some presenters. So we talked about April Barnes and Kristen Kennedy from USC is very strong in reporting out data and have done presentations about it before. And then, I think Paul actually mentioned there is a group hopefully presenting at ACUHO-I Home that Hillary from Seattle is doing with Skyworks that maybe we could implement into a webinar as well.
So much. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I will collect those notes if you could send that my way. I think the next steps, all right, so we're in about to be May. We won't have any June and July, or July and August, we will be off. And I'm wondering what we can work on prior to, us stopping, to at least put some feelers out to see if folks would be interested in participating in a webinar. Well, more than participating, presenting a webinar or a chat and chew. So I think after I look at the notes and talk with Tori and Curtis, we'll talk about some next steps so that we can be a little bit more deliberate about that. So thank you so much. That was our discussion for the webinar. Any final thoughts in that regard? It's 4:56. I want to be mindful of folks' time.
I was just gonna say, if we have a good variety of topics we want to pursue, there's no rule saying we can only do one webinar a month. If we have the volunteers to tackle, we could do a couple, and that would give us quite a few engagements through the end of the year.
I like that. Okay. And any announcements? Anything happening in your world you want to tell us about? All right. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you next month. Bye.